Netherlands and Trump.
I mean, go on, you teed that up. You teed that up.
Let's tee it up right now. We were doing this with futures. I mean, Dow futures up 21 this morning. John, Macron's coming. He's here. He's in Washington.
I think there's a real tension.
No, Cameron. But could you imagine President Biden saying somebody on the U.S. soccer team, you got to stay at Arsenal or whatever? The president of France is telling Mbappe, this guy that I think is great for France, he's got to stay at PSG versus Real Madrid.
Classic French nationalism.
Yeah, I mean, come on. I mean, this stuff matters, doesn't it?
Of course it does. I think there's a bit of tension here between the president and the French leader.
Oh, yeah.
It really is real. Europeans around trade.
Let's get a brief on this now. We'll do this with Anne-Marie Horton, who's lived it as well. Mr. Macron will attend Washington. It is a special relationship. It's fractured, Anne-Marie. Have they moved beyond the Australian submarine debacle?
Well, it was this time last year, right, that this was really something that was a huge deal in the relationship, was really fraying the relationship. You saw Macron call back the ambassador in Washington to France because they were so irked by this and the communication that they feel like the United States did not bring them in on this when they struck this deal with Australia and the United Kingdom, and that really was a blow for France. They moved beyond that, but there's a new issue in this special relationship, and that has to go with Jonathan was just talking about, which is trade. Macron has called it unfriendly policies about the Inflation Reduction Act and the subsidies this would be for U.S. companies, and his finance minister, Bruno Le Maire, went even further, equating it to what China does. So this is clearly going to be brought up, even though there's going to be a lot of pomp and circumstance and all the exciting stuff of the state dinner. There's real tension at the heart of this relationship.
Come on, Anne-Marie, from de Gaulle to Pompidou and beyond to Chirac, they invented state intervention in industry. Aren't we just ripping out a page from what the French did 30 years ago?
And you know what? The French and the Europeans, they end up doing this themselves. And you know what this administration likes to talk about is the fact that there's not enough investment in clean energy, in EV anyway. So this is why they are doing this, and they really don't think there's going to be harm to these European companies. So you know, it'll be interesting what happens. There's some task force that the Europeans and the U.S. are working on to how they get out of this, because this is something that behind closed doors and even out in open, European officials are incredibly annoyed about with the Biden administration. But also, we should note that there is a divergence in Europe about this. You have the Germans at the same time who, especially the likes of Habeck, who's the German economy minister, he comes from the Green Party. He thinks things like this are actually useful in the industry, and they also want to make sure that the lines of communication are open and friendly with the Biden administration.
And just sort of to dig into that a little bit more, Anne-Marie, what does Emmanuel Macron want from President Biden in order to feel more okay with the plans as they are now?
Well, he probably wants them to rip up the IRA, right? But Congress passed legislation, now it's law, so that's not going to be happening. So there's really not an end game for this unless Congress was to go back and adopt a new law. That's not happening. So this might just be the U.S. trying to make the French feel good.
Okay, so how important is it for the U.S. to make the French feel good when they're trying to get some unity around, particularly China? Sort of ironic, given some of the jawboning recently.
Well, also ironic, given Charles Michel is en route to China at this moment. He'll be landing there this week. Particularly difficult timing, given the fact that there are protests around the country due to their COVID-0 policy. And also, Emmanuel Macron will be heading to China. I mean, I think what the U.S. is likely going to convey to Macron, as they have with other European leaders, is the fact that the West needs to remain united when it comes to China. The U.S. has struck a number of not just legislation when it comes to producing more chips at home, but also curbing exports to China. This has drawn the ear of other Europeans, like the Netherlands, who send a lot of high technology chips to China. But the U.S. is really trying to go for this multilateral approach to make sure that when they're setting up competition with China, it's not just the U.S. versus China, it's the U.S. alongside their allies.
Thank you. Down in Washington, Anne-Marie on the latest with meeting between the President and the French leader. Sure, far away.
6.2 million tourists from America visit Paris, as compared to the United Kingdom. Kingdom, 2.7 million.
Where are we going with
It's
this?
Do you really want to know where we're going with this?
Right,
I can explain.
This.
Well, Tom thinks Paris. He thinks Macron. He thinks vacation.
No,
he thinks
Tom's
him going
Tom's
right and going to Paris, right?
No, what's important here is in the Bloomberg world, folks, we are centered on London, New York, and Hong Kong. And London is the city-state of finance there. France has given up the financial, and good morning, BNP Paribas Sachin. I'm sorry to insult you. Mon Dieu. But the bottom line here, but notice the joke said, oh,
That's it.
yeah, that's it.
We make baguette.
Baguette. Okay, there we go. Thank you. John, what's important here
Don't
is,
take
could
me
you
down.
imagine Paris if they decided to become capitalistic and compete with London?
They need more flexible labour laws.
Yes.
A job in Paris at a bank is viewed by the people that run the bank as a job for life, and they like the flexibility of the laws in London and in New York.
Yeah, I just think that we're biased against covering London and New York versus Paris. And
I do think the French talking about protectionism and throwing that accusation around comes across a little
Yeah.
bit. Do you remember when Pepsi wanted to buy Danone all that time ago? Do you remember that?
right,
And I think
yes.
the French described it as a flower of industry, and they didn't want to let it go.
In England, do you say Renault or Renault?
I say Renault. What do you say?
From my childhood, we say Renault.